So Madam Chair, you have a quorum with 5 members present.
Okay. All right, so good evening. This is the Peralta Community College District Bond Measures Oversight Committee meeting for October 28, 2020. Call to order would be roll call, please, and state your name when you say here.
Certainly. So starting the roll call, let's see, Ariana Brown, I don't believe is here, and I do not see her name listed in the attendee list. Benjamin Scott.
Present, here.
Thank you. Kevin Jenkins.
Here.
Thank you. Marcus Crowley. I see you, you're on mute. I could tell you said here.
Marcus, need to take yourself off mute.
There we go.
There you go. Thank you, sir. Patricia Ellis, she had indicated she was not going to be able to make it, and I do not see her in the attendee list. And Yusef Herbert.
Yes, here.
Thank you. So to reiterate, Madam Chair, you have a quorum.
Okay, and yes, I am here too.
Oh, and yes, Andrea Dawson.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So the first order of business is to review the minutes and approve the agenda. I'm sorry, approve the agenda. So are there any corrections or requests to move items on the agenda?
Yes, this is Marcus. I have a correction for the agenda. On the agenda item number 6, it says the annual report for the subcommittee. I just wanted to point this out, that it is not the annual report for the subcommittee. About 3 months after the subcommittee final meeting, Mr. Jenkins decided to issue this report. And so this is the Jenkins report, not the subcommittee's report. And as a matter of a procedural motion, I move that the Jenkins report be returned to the subcommittee so that we can find and conclude a subcommittee report for this committee.
Okay, excuse me, Mr. Crowley. Okay, that you are so noted that is your notes to be noted in the minutes that on item 6, it is discussion and adoption of the subcommittee draft annual report, and we're going to leave it at that, and we're going to move on.
No, we're not, because I have a procedural motion, and a procedural motion must be voted on.
And what is that? We can vote on it when we get to that item. Excuse me.
Okay, do I have the floor right now?
No, you do not. I asked if you wanted to move an agenda item, not if you wanted to speak to an agenda item.
I have a procedural motion for this agenda item.
Okay, put it forward then.
Okay, I move that the Jenkins report be returned to the subcommittee, and that this Jenkins report agenda item be deleted from the agenda.
Okay. I recognize your objection, but it's so noted, and we're going to move on.
So we need to have a vote on my procedural motion.
So there needs to be a second if there is a proposed amendment. If there's no second, then there cannot be a vote.
And I will say it is not the Jenkins report. You're calling it, that is not what it says in this. It says it will be presented by Vice Chair Jenkins because he was the chair of our subcommittee. So
he unilaterally decided on this.
We are moving
In
on.
our previous meeting, we decided that we would not accept a unilateral subcommittee report because it was not issued by the subcommittee. And
We
so
are moving on.
Same situation here.
We are moving on.
Do I hear a second?
Hearing none, we are moving on. So would anyone like to put forward approval of the minutes from July 1st, 2020?
Okay.
Pardon, Chair Dawson, we still need to vote on the agenda acceptance.
Oh, I apologize. Okay. Is there a vote? Call for a vote on the agenda as it stands. Please.
So we're looking for a motion to accept the agenda.
Motion to accept the agenda.
I second. Roll call, please.
Benjamin Scott?
Aye.
Kevin Jenkins?
Aye.
Marcus Crawley?
No.
Youssef Herbert?
Aye.
Ariana Brown? Not here. And Patricia Ellis? Not here. Motion carries.
Okay, thank you. So item 4 is simply a clarification that is per item. There's a 3-minute per comment, 15 minutes maximum on public comment.
Chair Dawson, did we want to consider the minutes?
Seeing that we have one public at this time, I would say no. That
Okay.
it's 3 minutes per comment per item. So the next item is the bond program update information. And
I object to the minutes. There are some corrections that need to be done to the minutes.
we just, okay, I apologize. Next time, I think I'll have these split in two, the approving the agenda and then approving the minutes. So we will
So
review.
they are review and approve agenda as item 2 and review and approve minutes from July 1st, 2020 is item 3.
Which is what I thought I just put forward.
Okay.
But, right, correct?
So
I know that we voted on item 2,
Okay,
but I don't know that we voted on item 3.
I would like to comment on the minutes and get the corrections.
you are welcome to. You are welcome to. Please comment.
Oh, thank you. Okay, on the minutes from our July meeting, on number 3, it says Mr. Crowley. My name is Mr. Crawley, unless you're referring to somebody else.
It will be so corrected.
Okay, and then on the second page of the minutes, there is a typo of AWA. I don't know what AWA stands for, but we need to decide what that is and correct it. And I have another item also.
Go ahead.
Okay, so on the minutes number 10, it says that the need to get the annual report to the board. And I point out that we do not have an obligation to get it to the board. We have an obligation to put the annual report before the public. And you'll find that in the Education Code 15278. It states it right there in section B shall be to inform the public. And then the last line of B says shall convene to provide oversight, but not limited to the following. So this is for the public, not the board. So I've mentioned that numerous times before, and I think that we could finally decide that that is our policy and correct this.
So I'm not sure that was that actually stated at the July 2020 meeting?
Yes, I stated that, and you just buzzed right on by it.
No, I'd have to go back and look, but what I'd like to do is the correction. If we're going to correct in this meeting minutes now, we accept that it is for the public and for the board, because the board policy says it comes before the board once a year too. So we can either do it that way, or we can just table these minutes until our next meeting.
I don't think that we should be confusing the issue for the future members of including the board. If the board wants to read it, fine, it'll be on the website, but we are not presenting it to the board. And
Mr. Crawley,
We are presenting it to the board.
if I may, the minutes were taken based off of very careful review of the Zoom recording, which is on YouTube now, of this meeting. And this is really a reflection of what Chair Dawson said at that particular item.
So I think that a more appropriate place to bring this up, Mr. Crowley, is in review of the Peralta CBOC bylaws when we get to that item. You can not vote to approve these minutes if you'd like to, and you've been so noted what your objections are, but I'd like to note your objections and then call for a roll call and approval of the minutes.
okay, we can take it up next time.
Okay.
Was there a motion to accept the minutes as
Motion.
amended, or?
Motion to accept the minutes as amended.
And I second. Andrea Dawson.
Thank you.
And I would like to recognize that it looks like Ariana Brown has joined us.
Oh, fantastic. Let's see, just to confirm, there's an Ariana in the meeting. Is this Ariana Brown?
Yes, I am here.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Of course.
I am going to adjust the name so that we can see.
And welcome, Ariana.
Great. Welcome. And you're just in time for roll call vote on accepting the minutes. So Ariana Brown,
Yes.
Benjamin Scott,
Yes.
Marcus Crawley,
Yes,
Patricia Ellis is not here. Yusef Herbert,
Yes.
Kevin Jenkins,
Yes.
Andrea Dawson.
Yes.
Thank you. Minutes are approved.
Okay, moving on. So as I said, item 4 is really just to notify the public that there's a 3-minute per comment for each agenda item. So we will move on now to item 5. We take the comments on the item, not prior to the item. So it would be the bond program update.
Okay, great. Thank you, Chair Dawson. Good evening, committee members. My name is Keith Kajia. I'm the program manager from AECOM for the capital program. It's my pleasure to present to you again this evening. Good to see all of you. Let me try to share my deck if I get my technology to work properly here. Are you seeing that?
Yes, we are.
Okay, great. Let's go into presentation mode. What's happening? It's not going into presentation mode. Oh, I see. My screens are split here. Can you see the full screen?
We see the thumbnails on the left and the main slide in the middle.
Okay. Hold on. Let me see if I can. Now what are you seeing?
Slideshow, resume slideshow.
Apologies.
Let's
Interesting.
see.
Interesting.
So I have the PDF of the document I can show if you want to do it that way, Keith.
Maybe Mark, if you do that, I'm having a technical challenge. I'll stop sharing here.
Okay.
We've got a new split screen setup that I haven't quite figured out yet. It's supposed to make my life easier, not more difficult.
Okay. I'm resizing here to make it look more like a slideshow.
Did you also, by the way, Mark, go through the other attendees in the meeting? Like I see Dave Olson's here.
Oh, I'm sorry. No, I did not. We just checked for the committee members, but we did not acknowledge the guests that are with us.
Perhaps we could
I'm
take a
sorry about
moment
that. Welcome.
so they could introduce themselves and who they are. I see Dave's happy face there. That's why I was commenting that I haven't heard from him yet.
Yeah, hi, I'm Dave Olson. I work with Baxter McCauley and McCarley and Berry, and we are the district's financial advisor on the bond program.
Hello, I'm Adil Ahmed. I'm the interim vice chancellor of finance and administration.
Welcome.
Thank you. Etheria?
Hi, I'm Etheria Smith. I am currently the director of facilities planning and development, and will be the acting vice chancellor of general services.
Thank you.
Hi.
Chief of Staff Roberts?
Hi, good evening. My name is Royal Roberts. I'm the interim chief of staff to the chancellor. And I apologize. I have another meeting that's starting in a few minutes, so I'm going to have to jump off. But I look forward to joining you here in the future for future meetings.
Thank you.
Okay. Okay.
See, and we have Andrea Stokes is also on the line as a Peralta employee.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Welcome.
Mark, can you? Oh, sorry.
I'm just looking at the other names, and there's Anton Youngher, community member. Okay.
Okay, Keith, let's kick it off.
Okay, great. Maybe just go to the next slide here. So I'm thrilled to be able to give you a bond update of where we've moved the program forward since our last meeting. As you're clearly all aware of, we've issued the last kind of issuance of the Measure A funds for $65 million. And we've issued we sold the first series of bonds for Measure G for $50 million. So what I wanted to focus today's presentation on is where we're planning to spend the $115 million, give you a snapshot of the status of those projects and some of the measures that we're taking to kind of move the capital program forward, and certainly do all those things I was discussing in our previous meeting related to reporting transparency and making sure we're good stewards of the bond funds. Next slide, Mark. So here's kind of a breakdown, a high-level summary, if you will, for the projects that are currently underway, using, again, that $50 million from Measure G and the $65 million from Measure A. This is a breakdown by campus. So you can see that we've allocated those funds across kind of these 5 categories of costs. It's by campus and a district-wide category. Next slide, Mark. Now what I'll do is I'll take you through each college campus. This is a further breakdown to that summary. Again, here what I'm doing is showing you the Measure A and Measure G anticipated spending for these specific projects. You may recall from our last meeting that I discussed the bond spending plan, which was actually the 7-year capital outlay plan for delivering projects, the $1 billion program. What we're focusing again on here today is the use of those current bond funds that we've recently sold. So you can see here for the College of Alameda, one of the more notable projects that represented one of the larger spends for Measure A is the new Center for Liberal Arts. It's a building that was substantially completed in July. In fact, at the next board meeting, we'll be presenting kind of a grand opening video, if you will, so you can start to tour kind of what that great facility looks like. One of the other notable projects here that's moving forward is the Auto and Diesel Technologies building. That's a project where we're receiving state matching funding for. That project is currently in design. And then you can kind of see the list of other projects here. Many of these are in a planning phase. The aviation projects complex for phase 1, that's currently just starting design. Exciting news for the aviation complex phase 2 project is that we've recently received confirmation from the state chancellor's office that we'll be receiving state funding for that project as well. And then there are some projects that are a little bit further out. The STEM building is a new science building for the campus. That's been in a very, very early planning stage. We'll be moving a criteria architect procurement forward for that project within the next month and a half. And then you can see the rest of the projects lined out there as an interim housing project, infrastructure spend to do some of those ongoing necessary preparation projects really for the upcoming capital projects, things that kind of address the infrastructure of the college, and then information technology spend. This is a refresh of technology for the campus. You'll see those last 2 lines for infrastructure and information technology repeated at each college campus. Next slide, Mark. This is just giving you kind of a rendering of the Auto and Diesel Technologies building. So you can see that it's well under design right now. Again, listing those projects that are moving forward. We can kind of move to the next slide. Here's Berkeley City College. The most notable project there is the new building that's planned for the corner of Center Street and Milvia Street. We call it the 218 Milvia Street building. There's ongoing programming with the criteria architect. This is a project we're advancing with the design build methodology. Again, that's where we hire a designer and a builder in a single contract procurement. That contract procurement is on the street right now as we speak. We're going through a RFQ phase, a request for qualifications phase to qualify design build entities for that project. We're also moving forward with the CEQA process in parallel with that to do an environmental assessment of the impacts for that project on that site. And again, you see a repeat of the infrastructure and IT buckets there that you saw on the previous campus. Next slide, Mark. Again, this is the shot of the corner where we're going to be removing that 3-story building that's there and putting a new 6-story, 60,000 square foot building in its place. Next slide, Mark. Here's the overview for Laney College. You can see there are a number of projects that are moving forward. The exciting news here is that there are a couple of pretty major substantial projects moving forward. The Learning Resource Center, the Laney Theater Modernization, and the Laney Locker Room projects. Notably, the Learning Resource Center and the Laney Theater are state matched projects, so we'll be receiving state money for those projects. Those projects are right on schedule in line with the DSA timelines that we've established with the state chancellor's office. Some of these other projects are kind of what we might call make-ready projects that are tied to the Learning Resource Center. The second project in the line there, the East Bay Mud Water Main Relocation, that's actually a water main that runs right underneath the current site for the Learning Resource Center, so we need to relocate that water main. So we're working with with the utility, East Bay Mud, to move that water line. And then there's a central plant cooling tower project. The cooling towers are also in the footprint of the LRC, the new Learning Resource Center. So that project's moving forward as well. That's a design build procurement. We've actually selected a contractor, a design build entity for that project. It'll be moving forth to the board very shortly here. So exciting news, we'll be starting the redesign of the central plant. The great thing there is that'll really address all the needs of the entire campus for the overall utilities, central utilities. Next slide here. This is a snapshot of the rendering for the theater modernization, which again, a state-funded project that's well under design. And then you can see again the projects that I referenced earlier that are moving forward with some of this money. Here's the overview of Merritt College. Again, here there's two projects that are state-funded. It's this Child Development Center and the Horticulture Building. Those projects are right on schedule again as well to achieve all their milestones related to achieving state funding. We have another project that's called a Science Allied Health TI build out. That's really a renovation to Building S, the science building on the campus, the Barbara Lee building, frankly. And so we've got a project there that'll be ramping up very shortly here with bringing on a criteria architect to finish out some of the spaces in that building. And again, you can see kind of the typical infrastructure and IT spend. The next slide here, Mark, actually shows the horticulture, a little rendering of that horticulture building space. That's a replacement building up on the hill there for the horticulture department. Next slide. There's a number of expenditures that are tied to district-wide items. Some of these are district-wide projects. For example, there's a set aside here for administrative complex repairs. Those are really upgrades to the existing administrative complex, replacements of systems that are in the building there. There's a district-wide information technology spend, which represents some of the software and server upgrades for the district. There's a blue phone installation, which impacts multiple projects across the district. So it's a phase 2 project to replace those security phones at a number of different campuses. You can see a line for Chromebook purchases that were done when the COVID outbreak occurred initially. There's a program support services line, which is program management services, legal services, auditing services, and district support, basically for the bond program. And we have a set aside for library equipment and books. Next slide, Mark. There's a number of legacy, kind of what I call Measure A part projects, really projects that were ongoing in the previous periods before I frankly arrived as your program manager. This is kind of a breakdown of where the balance of that $65 million is being spent on some of those projects. You can see they touch a number of different campuses, but overall representing largely modernization and upgrades at different projects or district-wide initiatives related to security and elevator type systems, fire panel upgrades, whatnot. One of the things that we're working closely with Dave Wilson, the financial advisors, is that we do have a finance and facilities subcommittee that meets every other week. And we're constantly looking at planning for the future spend for the bond. One of my responsibilities as program manager is to anticipate and forecast what those needs for cash would be so that we can properly size and time when we might issue the future bond sales. This is an example of the output of our system, which represents a cash flow of the capital spend over time. You can see a breakdown here of how we anticipate spending the Measure A and G monies. And then as we have an influx of state reimbursements for those state-funded projects, we've incorporated that into this cash flow, as well as a small federal grant. Basically, this is a living document, right? So it's something that we anticipate updating actually every month, but I'd probably report on it every quarter to you so you can kind of see a rolling trend of how we're doing against our projection, and more importantly, what the timing might look like for future bond sales. Next slide, Mark. Change is always ongoing, as all of you are probably well aware, and there's a number of things that really cause evolution of the program. District priorities can change, obviously, as we see leadership change throughout the district, whether it's with college presidents or otherwise. Educational master plan updates are going to be forthcoming. I think one of the things that we've seen in this COVID environment is that there's certainly a different shift on how education is being frankly delivered, right? There's a lot of remote learning going on. How does that impact the facilities, frankly, that we're about to put in place? Those are things that we're looking at closely so we can continue to align with how the district envisions actually delivering education to its students. We're also completing a space utilization analysis for all the existing facilities. This is kind of an evaluation of how those existing buildings and rooms, frankly, are being utilized right now. It's a great tool for us to kind of align the future facilities master plan, which is how do we update and upgrade the facilities over time. So these are all documents that must run in parallel related to that really comprehensive planning for us to move the program forward. You know, one of the big factors that we're looking at right now is the impact of COVID, frankly, on market construction costs. You may recall that in previous presentations related to the bond spending plan, there's about a 5% escalation allowance in our budgets right now over time. What we're seeing right now is kind of a flattening of that number, right? Because of the kind of slowdown in construction, pricing has kind of slowed a little bit related to construction. We anticipate that to continue probably for roughly 12 to 18 months. At least that's kind of the input I'm getting back from contractors. That's great news for us, right? That means the more work we can get out right now, the better pricing we're going to be receiving. So the more we can get as far as bricks and mortar construction for our bond dollars. And of course, the availability of non-bond funds. If we find that we're eligible for other grants outside of the bond program, whether it's CARES funding, whether it's other grants, other participatory programs related to, say, sustainability initiatives, these are all things that can really be utilized to leverage the current bond funds. As an example, we're looking at the state money, and we've done a great job of doing that with some of our ongoing state projects. Next slide, Mark. In fact, this is kind of a snapshot of where we are with those state-funded projects. So if you can look at this, these are the 6 projects that are moving forward that have state funding, what we call final project approvals approved by the state. Again, that's a commitment, really a contract, if you will, between the district and the state to do these projects, to do a certain amount of square footage for those projects. And in return, the state is going to be providing a little over $75 million in matching funds for these projects. One of the important things is to keep these projects on a scheduled timeline. And you can see what I've done here is a little simple matrix to really show from the previous time I presented to you back in July to the current time. You can see the progress that we've made in the design phase for these projects. The great news is that they're all moving forward. They're right on track, right on schedule to make sure that we secure that $75 million. Next slide. Communication is pretty important, and I've really highlighted in red here your committee and this presentation in this format. As you're aware from previous meetings, I made a commitment to present to you at every meeting to give you a snapshot of where we are, the progress that we're making, and where we really stand with moving the projects forward that are being bond funded. You can see there's a number of other presentations that are continuously being made to not only make sure that we're including participatory governance processes and shared governance processes, but we're reaching out to the community and really the community for Peralta and the business community as well. We've done a lot of work on outreaching to local businesses. Of course, one of the strong pushes on our side is to really make sure that we kind of hit a 25% local small business participation goal. We have a number of initiatives that we've been undertaking to achieve that goal, and we'll be tracking our payments to vendors so that we can start reporting on how we're doing against that initiative. Next slide, Mark. Speaking of business outreach, these are things that have kind of been occurring since we last met. We've done what we call matchmaking sessions, where we kind of connect businesses, local businesses, with prime contractor firms. We're in the middle of doing an architectural service request for qualifications. We're creating basically a bench of architectural firms that'll be doing design work for our projects. A huge turnout, frankly, for that procurement. We had 44 requests, statements of qualifications submitted to the district. So there are 44 firms that wanted to do business with the district. So we're in the process of evaluating those. Frankly, what we're doing is creating a number of different categories so we can really spread the amount of contract opportunities available to companies. We're also doing a small business set aside for that procurement, where we're setting aside some of the smaller infrastructure projects for those small local businesses to make sure that they're able to participate in the capital program. We're moving forward with that Berkeley Milvia design build project. So we've had an outreach session for that. Again, that's right in the middle of its request for qualifications phase. And then we're doing something really exciting with what we're calling Peralta Academy. In fact, there's a session going on right now as we speak. This is a series of 9 courses that we've created that we outreach to small local businesses, and we actually provide training to them in a 2-hour format in the evenings on different technical topics. Really, this is intended to equalize the bidding pool to make sure that small local businesses have equal access to information and knowledge to really be competitive when they bid the projects for Peralta. We've done one on construction safety, on CUBCA bidding and procurements, and tonight there's actually one going on right now as we speak about access to capital and how to manage profitability and cash flow for a company. So we have bankers, we have the Small Business Association actually presenting tonight with the Peralta team to small local businesses. And with that, that concludes my presentation. Happy to take any questions that you might have, or you can continue on with your agenda. I turn it back to Chair Dawson.
Okay, so do we have questions from the committee? No questions?
That must mean I did great.
Yeah, it's very good.
It was a very robust presentation. Thank you.
Yes, it was quite good. Thanks.
Thank you.
It was Ben Scott, I believe, that said it was good presentation, correct? And I agree. So I appreciate it. And hearing no comments from the committee, I'll ask if there's any comments from the public. Hearing none. Well, thank you, and tell you to have a good evening. Take care and continue to do the good work.
And again, we will post, we're continuing to post things on our bond website, right? I think I mentioned that before. We have a bond website, so I encourage you to look at the bond website. And these presentations that I make to the committee are posted on our bond website, as well as the presentations I make to the Board of Trustees as well.
All right, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Take care. So that brings us to the next item, which is discussion and possible adoption of the subcommittee draft annual report. And I will call on Kevin Jenkins to present this and then open it for discussion.
Thank you. So, oh, the screen's got Chair.
Did you want,
What?
sorry, Kevin. Did you want me to share at this point, or?
That's fine. Chair Dawson and Commissioner Crawley and I formed a subgroup to work on writing the annual report. We met over the course of 3 or 4 times. We had a lack of consensus coming out of the subcommittee. And so what Chair Dawson, Commissioner Crawley, and I agreed to was that I would take recommendations from both of them and present a report to come out of the subcommittee for the greater group at large to discuss and to adopt or send it back to subcommittee. Like I said, we did not all agree on what would be in there, what should be in there. And so this was the best merging of ideas. I think it gets to the point. It tells the story to the voters of what happened. It also tells the story to the voters of what the shortfalls were. And here's what I present before you tonight.
Okay, so I will open it up for a round of comments from committee members. Mr. Crowley, would you like to go first?
If somebody else wants to go first, it'd be just fine with me. If nobody else has any comments or questions, I'll be happy to go.
Okay, well, I think I will go before you for an initial comment to express to the whole committee that our subcommittee had a lot of discussion about what transpired in 2017 and 18 prior to us becoming a committee, when the parcel tax and the bond committee were actually one committee. And so as I expressed in the spring, I talked to Michael Willis about what was the reason that they did not write an annual report on the bond measure program. And he said to me, frankly, we were too concerned, and we became so concerned about what was happening with the parcel taxes that we focused on that and did not spend bandwidth on the bond itself, that they weren't actually concerned with the bond program. So that's what he told me in the spring. So Michael Willis is no longer on the parcel tax committee or on this committee for that matter. So when the committee split apart, the parcel tax became a new committee, and as we know, we were formed as a new committee. So I spoke to the chair of the parcel tax committee, which is Debbie Weintraub. And she was actually on the bond and parcel tax committee prior to that. And she actually wrote me an email that after reading our report, and she said in her email, she said, our report is accurate. And that as far as getting into the details of how the committees were split and their responsibility of writing an annual report for the previous years, that she felt it was up to her and their committee to speak to that the onus was on them to rectify that, not us, because she and I believe there's another member that's still on the parcel tax that were sitting members at the time all this transpired. So what I attempted to do was take Mr. Crowley's information and the information that was actually posted different places, what happened on when they split the committees, and speak to it in a non-judgmental way, because it was not us that was that committee. So I think that was one of the fundamental issues that we had problems coming to consensus to. And I'll leave it at that now and let Mr. Crowley speak to the report.
Okay, thank you. So I think that this Jenkins report should be sent back to the subcommittee because it's unfinished and misleading. So a few minor examples of this unpolished form can be found on most pages. Most pages have various random shaded gray zones in sentences meaning nothing, and other pages have random bullet points with no content. So this committee can and should do better to have a more professional document. And when I am proceeding through looking at the various sections of this document, I encourage everybody that is attending this meeting to also follow through the annual report so that you can see what I'm talking about. I also want to comment on the factual content of this Jenkins report by examining the report sections. And the first section is right at the top here. It's called the purpose of this report. Now, the purpose of this report states that in the second or third paragraph down, that the Citizens Bond Oversight Committee annual report for 2019 fiscal year and 2018-19 and fiscal years 2017 and 18. So this is going to be reporting on both Measure A and Measure G. Now, the Jenkins report correctly states that the Citizens Bond Oversight Committee is a report to the public on the expenditures in the recent past years. And next, the Jenkins report spends.
This is not the, okay.
I've got the floor now, so I'll just.
Time's almost up for your first round.
So the Jenkins report spends most of the next page in the section called the focus of this report, explaining what the district intends to do with bond funds in the future. And the Citizens Bond Oversight Committee, our duty is to inform the public what happened. So this report states that the focus of this report is about what will happen in the future, and the Peralta future plans is not supposed to be the focus of this report. And after this report's focus on the future section, the report finally starts focusing on past expenditures. And I want to talk about the misleading facts of this report and the analysis of the past compliance and requirements.
Okay, so that's so that's at 3 minutes now. So,
no, Andrea.
Excuse me.
You excuse me, I have the floor.
No.
And there's no limit on the amount of time that
yes, there is actually.
Can talk on a subject.
No, it's at the chair's discretion. And before you continue on, I would like to know if any other member of the committee would like to comment on the report. We can come back to you, but we can come back to you. But you get 3 minutes. This is a conversation. It's not, you don't get the floor the whole time.
Yes.
So, excuse me. I'm going to ask that you're put on mute.
You had as much time as you wanted. And so now it's my time. I've got the floor. I should be able to talk.
I took less than 3 minutes. You can, I'm asking that you be put on mute and give someone else the floor if they're interested. Is anyone else interested in speaking on this at this time?
Through the chair.
Yes, Mr. Jenkins?
For the record,
Three minutes.
Oh, no, I don't need it. For the record, I wanted to show that it's not the Jenkins report. That's something that Commissioner Crawley made up. It's the report that came out of the subcommittee. Thank you.
May I respond to that?
No, I want to say something too. It's a conversation. So we had a subcommittee, and I believe Kevin was accurate when he said we met 4 times. You presented a number of changes that were incorporated into this report. And the reason for the highlights, I would just like to tell the rest of the committee that is here this evening, is to highlight what the discussions were about and what we could agree on, and even getting down to the words appointment activities. We had long conversations about what that should say, whether it was activities or it was just CVOC membership. So I left the highlights in. They simply would be lifted off by a vote this evening. And where it says link here, I would ask that the district provide the appropriate link to the Build Peralta website. So this report is essentially complete and minor, as long as it does not change the report, minor corrections can be made. So you can have 3 more minutes, Mr. Crawley, but then after that, I would like to open it up to other folks and actually have a conversation about approving this report to move it forward. You can have 3 more minutes.
Okay, so in the section, the next section called CBOC membership appointments and activities, I want to point out that this report explains that for many years before the voters approved Measure G bond in 2018, the Citizens Bond Oversight Committee for bond oversight had been combined with the Citizens Oversight for parcel tax oversight. And the report explains that the district decided to separate the two committees. That's okay. Separating the two committees was a proper action. Since the two committees have different duties, they have different legal obligations, and they're overseeing different sources of funds. But the bond oversight report to the public on past bond expenditures and the citizens oversight reports to the district board on parcel tax expenditures. The big problem with separating these two committees is the procedure that the district used to separate the two committees. This report downplays the fact that the district terminated both committees and restarted them again about 9 months later. The district has a statutory duty to keep the bond citizen bond oversight committee active at all times when bond funds exist. The Measure A bond imposed a duty of the ongoing Citizens Bond Oversight Committee since 2012, and the Measure G bond doubled that obligation again in 2018. And this report is misleading when it explains that for a number of years, the Parcel Tax Oversight Committee had been combined with the Peralta Bond CBOC. It explains that in March 2019, the Peralta dissolved the Parcel Tax Oversight Committee. This report fails to state that the Peralta simultaneously dissolved or terminated or disbanded the required Bond Oversight Committee. This report misdirects the public's attention from dissolving the Bond Oversight Committee to dissolving the Citizens Oversight Committee. The status of the Citizens Oversight Committee is irrelevant to this report. The status of dissolving the Citizens Bond Oversight Committee is vital to this report. And this report is deceptive about the issue of dissolving and terminating the required Bond Oversight Committee.
Okay, so that is
And
3 minutes. I'd like you,
Andrea, what source is are you referring to as far as parliamentary procedure whereby a committee member has a minimum 3-minute right to talk on a subject? I think you're just pulling that out of thin air. So what parliamentary procedure of Robert's rules is guiding your decision there?
what is guiding my decision is that you are one person of 6 people that are tuned in that are committee members. And so we all share the floor. And so there is to have a discussion about this. And I would like to hear from other committee members if they are interested in asking other questions about the report and what their thoughts are about moving this report forward so it can be presented to the board and the public. The way it gets posted is through us voting to approve the report, and it gets posted and presented. And then it can be posted anywhere. You can post it on the Alameda Taxpayers Association. You can post it at the state level. You can do anything, but that is our charge. And so before you continue on, I want to ask any other committee member, are you interested in making any comments at this point before I give Mr. Crowley 3 more minutes? Anyone interested? Hearing none, I would like to ask you though, Mr. Crowley, you made your point about about splitting the committee and how you do not believe it has been explained enough to make the public understand what you believe was a great disservice before our committee was convened, prior to our becoming a sitting committee. So I'd like you to express some of your other concerns of this report. and in hopes that folks can follow along. And do I see Mr. Herbert wanting to make a comment?
Excuse me. No, not at this time.
Okay. So, Mr. Crowley, would you like to move? You can have 3 more minutes to, but can you please move through the report?
Well, I point out that you didn't answer my question by what procedure that you are limiting me to 3 minutes, and I'm not interrupting you as you kept interrupting me. But so I will continue. So the next paragraph of this report states that the law requires that the Peralta has a statutory duty to establish the Bond Oversight Committee and keep it active, both for the Measure A 2012 bond and the Measure G bond, the new one. This report implies that the district had a duty to establish the Citizen Bond Oversight Committee within 60 days of voter approval, but it fails to state that the district violated the compliance requirement by terminating the Bond Oversight Committee. So the Peralta failed to comply with this statutory requirement, and the report fails to point that out. The annual report is required to report to the public if the Peralta is complying with requirements. Peralta's termination of the Bond Oversight Committee is a violation of the statutory duty. Now, in the next paragraph down, where I'm looking here, the Jenkins report launches into the report reporting that the district established new Citizen Bond Oversight Committee. Well, the Education Code requires that the new members receive a minimum 2-year term of service. And the Jenkins report scrambled the facts and the requirements so that the public readers will not easily be able to understand and realize that the new members were all assigned service terms that violated statutory requirements. The purpose of this annual report is to inform the public whether or not the district is in compliance with requirements. And the Jenkins report slides right past the violations of terminating the Citizen Oversight Committee and fails to state explicitly that the district failed to appoint new members with a minimum 2-year service. Instead, this report repeats the district's excuse that the lawyers for the district explain why. And the report and the lawyers explain that they wanted to have continuity of staggered terms. Well, however, the excuse is deceptive because the district could have easily achieved staggered terms with longer term of service that complied with statutory requirements. And this report implies that the members began serving when they were appointed in the late fall and early winter of 2019. No, the report fails to state that when the new members actually began their term, and that was at the inaugural meeting on December the 12th. So if you just add 2 years to December 12th, you can see that every member who had a term shorter than December the 12th, 2021 had a substandard term of service.
Okay,
And
so so you've had another 3 minutes, so I'd like to make a comment on this. Okay?
Okay.
All right. So every person on this committee has an opportunity to serve at least 2 years, more than 2 years.
I don't.
Yes, you do.
No, I don't. You look at it. Mine.
Can I finish my statement?
Before 2 years.
Can I finish my statement?
The district has no duty to extend my term of service.
Well, my point is actually that if I was arguing about this 2-year term, I would argue that they are obligated to extend your term so everyone has a 2-year term, rather than getting
Well,
stuck.
that's your argument.
Okay, well,
And I'm talking about the state.
I have a right to have an opinion too. And I do not believe the district did this with any malice. Or
That's not the statutory requirement. Whether they do things
Well, the
as
thing
malice or not is part.
the thing is,
the annual report has a requirement to explain that they were in violation. Now, they might be in violation because they're good-hearted. They might be in violation because they're ignorant of the law or some other reason. We don't know, but they are in violation. And our annual report is required to tell that to the public in no uncertain terms.
no,
Not
actually, our annual report, our obligation is to tell the public if they expended the money in terms of the bond. That is what our obligation is.
That is your narrow-sighted limitation on it.
Okay.
That's not what the statute says. It doesn't say anything about whether they comply only with money.
So, excuse me.
Chair, through the chair. May I
Yeah.
put a motion on the floor and we can leave it up to the will of the rest of the commissioners?
Yes, you are welcome to put a motion on the floor, Mr. Jenkins.
I move to approve the annual board report with the amendments that Commissioner Dawson moved forward.
Objection.
Wait.
I would like to finish saying what I have to say about this report first.
Well, I am going to second Mr. Jenkins' motion. And I believe legally, before we move for the vote, we do need to hear from the public. So if there is any public that is interested in commenting on this report, now is the time to call on the public. So, Mr. John.
Okay, well, I'm part of the public, and so
Mr. Crawley, it's not, Mr. Crawley, excuse me. I asked Mr. Johnson to ask if there's any members of the public that are interested in commenting on this report, public comment, prior to us calling for a vote.
Madam Chair, I'm not seeing anybody raise their hand. I'm not seeing anybody unmute themselves to prepare to make a comment. It does not look like there's a comment coming.
Okay, so I am seconding a motion to call for a vote and as amended, which would mean to lift all the gray and yellow highlights off this report, ask the staff to provide the links as appropriate in the report, and so move that we call for a vote, a motion to put this report forward.
Okay, that was moved by Kevin Jenkins, seconded by Andrea Dawson. For a roll call, Ariana Brown.
Ariana, you're on mute. May have to come back to her.
We'll come back to Ariana. Benjamin Scott.
Can you take me at the end, please?
Yes. Kevin Jenkins.
Yes.
Marcus Crawley.
No.
Yusuf Herbert.
Yes.
Andrea Dawson.
Yes.
Ariana Brown.
Yes.
And Benjamin Scott.
Yes.
Thank you. The motion carries.
Okay, thank you. So we will move on to item 7, and that is review and discussion of the Peralta bylaws. And Mr. Crowley, this was at your request. So would you like to speak to this item?
Yes. I looked at the definition of bylaws, committee bylaws, and it says those are the rules that a committee has for itself on governing how they will conduct themselves. This set of bylaws, we have never considered, thought about, voted on, or revised. This is the set of bylaws that was handed down to us from the Peralta District. And I think that we need to take responsibility for our own committee and draft our own bylaws that is doing what we want to do with the bylaws. So I'm not going to comment on the individual bylaws themselves. I just think that that we need to form a committee and a subcommittee and draft the bylaws that are appropriate for our committee.
So I think this would be a longer discussion that we would need to invite legal counsel to our next meeting to have a conversation about this, because I do believe in the board policy. It may say that these are basically board policy bylaws for this committee. And so we could have a separate set of bylaws, but basically they have to follow in tandem with the board policy. This is what I've seen at most other districts, and true, we may have some influence and to want to change some things in the board policy, and but it has to go before the board and be voted on. So I think that it's a conversation that would require some read back from legal.
Right. And I think that we need to have an independent legal counsel for our Citizens Bond Oversight Committee, because we cannot depend on the lawyer for the district who is dedicated to doing the best he can for the district to give us good advice. Just like in any litigation, you don't take advice from your opponent's lawyer, you take advice from your own lawyer. And the district is required to provide us with advisors, and in this particular case, a legal advisor. So we need our own legal advisor that is paid for by the district.
So I think that's something that could be brought up with legal counsel, and maybe the financial advisor or the chancellor would have some thoughts on that. But I think that has to be a separate item that comes up at our next meeting.
I'm bringing it up right now. It's a agenda item, so let's take a vote on that. That we request our own independent legal advisor for our consideration of the bylaws.
And who pays for that?
The district will pay for that. The district's required to pay for that.
So what you're asking is that we make that recommendation to the board?
Well, first off, we have to vote on it that is what we want.
Well, yeah, but I would like to understand what the avenue of getting something like this approved is from your perspective.
Well, I say that the first step is for us to vote that yes, that is what we want. And then after we have taken the first step, if the vote is yes, well, then we take the second step on exactly what we are going to do about it.
So you would like to put a motion on the floor?
I move that we agree that we need an independent legal advisor for our committee, starting with advice about our bylaws.
So
does anybody second my motion?
Well, can I ask a clarifying question?
Okay.
I'm sorry if I'm making, if you could be brief, but what is, in brief, what is the current issue or problem than the way things are currently proceeding?
Well, if you read the bylaws, it has an awful lot to do what we shall not do and we cannot do, and very little about what we're supposed to do. So let's see and let's consider what is best for our committee and what is best for our duty to the public. So far, we've not explored that. So that's what I want to
So if I could, before we, I don't know if you want to do a substitute motion through the chair, sorry, but is there a way just to, you can get a clarification from a lawyer without rewriting bylaws and all that. You could say, well, there's a lot of do's and don'ts, but what is our actual responsibilities and duties as the committee and to the public? You can ask for a legal opinion.
Yes, and that's what I was actually proposing in a roundabout way, is that we invite legal counsel to our next meeting and we be prepared to ask those questions, the do's and don'ts. So I think that there's enough brain trust in our committee that we can ask what actually falls within statute and what's best practice. And in the meantime, Mr. Crowley, you can come to that next meeting with some suggestions of best practices on policies from other school districts.
What you're suggesting is that either I go talk to some lawyer myself, or that we depend on the lawyers that gave us bad advice in the first place about, for example, staggering the terms and providing under 2-year service terms. So is that the kind of lawyer we're going to ask about our best interest?
Well,
who else are we supposed to go to, though, is the problem.
What we're supposed to do, if we look at the education code, it says the district is required to provide us advisors as we need it. And so right now I'm saying that we need a legal advisor, and the district can pay for it, just the same as if they paid their own lawyer to come and give us. But we cannot rely on the advice of the people that we're supposed to be supervising to give us the wise advice, what's best for us.
Are you talking about outside counsel?
Yes.
That has to go through probably an RFP process, and this is a whole. I think this is getting too complicated, personally.
Yes,
Why can't we vote? Yes, that's what we want.
I would like to make a substitute motion, and that is that we table your motion until after our next meeting, and we ask that legal counsel be present at our next meeting, and we have a conversation about bylaws, policy, and best practices from other districts. I can bring other policies that are different than this board policy, if that's where you're going with this.
Well, I already have a motion on the floor, and we were discussing my motion. So let's follow through with my motion. And the motion is, do we think that we need independent legal counsel? And if we say yes, then we've at least established that. So I move. Is there a second?
Is there a second on the floor?
Did anybody second?
So hearing none.
Our entire committee, we don't have a single committee person that even cares about us getting legal advice.
So let's go to the alternate motion of inviting legal counsel to our next meeting to discuss this and present what our role is, what they perceive our role is, and our committee at that time will have maybe a different perspective of whether we need outside legal counsel or not. So I'd like to hear a motion on, should we invite district legal counsel to our next meeting?
Can Can I interject with a third? Well, my thought is Mr. Crawley, in response to your question, I think we all have the best intentions here, and we all want the best for the public and for this committee. And I do think we need clarification. It's very common to get written legal opinions, but they have to know what they're writing about. So I don't know if there needs to be sort of a list drawn up of what the concerns or questions are. Then they can present legal arguments to us in writing, and then there can be a meeting to discuss them for how they can be implemented and if there's any ambiguity in them. I think the conversation is good, but it might be limiting, and also it's people's interpretation of the conversation. So there's nothing in writing. So it's very common to ask for legal opinions in writing. I don't think that needs to be from a third outside counsel. That's very expensive. It's $500-600 an hour for those folks.
So,
Mr. Scott, I think your point is,
the taxpayers just gave the district almost $1 billion. They can't even cut a few hundred out just so that we can do our job well of reporting to the public.
excuse me, so I think I would like to go back to Mr. Scott's comments, and I think
I'm starting to take umbrage a little bit here, because I'm just because I'm not doing it one way doesn't make me less of an advocate or less caring or less feeling or have less legal interest in what we're doing. It's a third option, and that is we put together a list of what our concerns and questions are, get a legal opinion from the district and see what they have to say. If we're in complete disagreement with it or it's wrong, sure, we need to go outside and get help. But we're completely bypassing the district right off the bat. I think it's disrespectful.
Yeah, I second your motion, Mr. Scott.
Well, I haven't actually made one, but this is just a discussion.
Yes, well, I think, would you like to make a motion to that effect, to invite legal counsel, but in the meantime, we present questions, which will
Well,
through the
what I'm worried about is that the lawyer comes and there's just going to be, differing opinions, and it's not going to go anywhere. I think if I don't know if the committee that just put out this report or something, come up with a list of what the concerns and questions are, submit those, get a legal opinion of what they are, and then have a discussion over something that's actually in writing.
Right.
Because what I don't want for the future is that there's different people's opinions about what the lawyer said. And now we have, well, when he was here, he said this. Well, that's not the way I heard it, or that's not the interpretation I heard them say. And now we're back to square one. So this needs to be in writing.
So, Mr. Scott, are you suggesting that we have a subcommittee to look into this problem, and are you?
Well, I have a feeling you probably have a list of 10 or 12
on some other day, exactly like we're doing right now.
Well, I don't even know if we need to have a meeting. I think all of us have the right to, possibly through the chairs, what I'm suggesting, send in lists of questions or things that need to be better defined. Those can be compiled by the chair to send off to the district to have a legal opinion written about them, and then have the lawyer come on who wrote them and explain them to us.
And I think that's a good approach, Mr. Scott. That's what I essentially am proposing, that you either put forward and I second it, or someone second it, and we vote on that.
Well, I mean, I'll probably have 2 or 3. Other people will have 2 or 3. Mr. Crawley may have more. Everybody has a right to submit as many questions of clarification or whatever they want. The lawyer's obligated to write a written response based on their understanding. And, we can agree to disagree, but we need to give the district a chance first, in my opinion.
And I second that. So would you like to put a motion forward, a formal motion, Mr. Scott?
Well, I guess the motion would be that the committee be allowed to each committee member be allowed to present a list of questions or clarifications that we would like the district attorney, the school district's attorney to define in writing, and then that be presented at a later meeting by that said attorney.
And I would second that motion. and ask that we have a roll call vote on that.
Well, but there's got to be discussion first
Oh, I'm sorry.
before the vote.
You are absolutely right. It's a long day today. I started at 6.
So in the spirit, Mr. Crowley, you have a point, and this is why I'm taking this seriously, and I think this is another option that is respectful to the district and to our needs and to yours.
So other folks
Are you
would like to discuss it?
handing the conversation off to me, Mr. Scott?
I'm sorry?
So if you are, just say so, and I'll be happy to talk.
So are other, I'm not sure,
I didn't hear what his question was. Sorry for the discussion.
I think he reached out and said, would you like to talk?
Mr. Scott.
I'm done
Mr.
talking.
Scott, are you? Okay. So when I started this conversation, all I said was, do we agree that we should have independent legal counsel? And it sounds to me like your idea is that no, we should not have independent legal counsel. We should take our legal counsel, we should take legal advice from our potential adversary. Basically, the district. In other words, we're supposed to be the guard dog guarding the chicken coop, and you are saying that no, the fox is really a nice fox, and therefore we can take advice from the fox.
So okay.
And the fox is really
point.
nice, but I think we should never take advice from the fox about what's going on in the chicken coop. We ought to be looking ourselves, and in this particular case, looking ourselves is looking at what's best for our committee. And our committee, the best thing for our committee is independent legal advice, not legal advice from the same guy or guys that already gave us misleading advice.
Okay, Mr. Crowley.
So can I respond?
Yes, you may. And then I'd like to open it up to others for comment.
So in response to Mr. Crowley, he made his motion. There was no second. So for me, this is a compromise. The compromise to me is I'm actually new to this committee, so I don't have an opinion yet on the district. So it sounds like you have a stronger opinion about the district. But I feel that as a new member, we owe it to the district to see what they come up with first before moving on to, I guess, somebody independent. Since it wasn't set up this way to begin with, I mean, I sit on a number of city commissions in Oakland, and it's very, very common to have staff give legal opinions. And this is the first time I've ever heard of completely bypassing the district or the city to see what they offer first. I mean, if there's some glaring opinions that are one-sided or not legally sound, then I'll be the first to make a motion to go to outside legal counsel. But to just immediately jump to that, I don't think that's prudent personally. So to me, this is a compromise. It addresses the concern that we need clarification. We let the district do their job. And then we move forward and see. It's in writing. If we don't like it or it's wrong, it can easily be presented then to outside counsel to review. But I don't see it that way. I mean, I've been on city commissions in Oakland for 20 years. And we always get the city attorney's office to come up with legal clarification and opinions. And this is the first I've heard of jumping to outside counsel so quickly. So I say we give them a chance personally, and we see what happens.
So I'd like to hear other members' comments on this. Do other members have a comment or different idea to put forward on this? So I again second Mr. Scott's motion, because I two have sat on a number of committees, and we have never not gone through a process that allows the agency first to give their responses to our questions or come and present to us. And I think it is a very good way to actually articulate our questions prior to the meeting. And then there can be more questions at the meeting, but we should definitely have questions and concerns that we have prior to the meeting that are questions come to me, and I will send them to Mr. Johnson, and he will forward them to legal counsel so that those questions can even be posted with the agenda, the next agenda, and they can be discussed. So, okay. So, Mr. Herbert, do you have a comment?
I just feel like we should, as Mr. Scott was saying, try to look at bringing in legal advice to address each. I mean, like we jump in the car before the horse here, and I just think we need to like taper back and see first on what these questions are that we want legal advice first before we start wrangling the district to pay for some form of legal advice or so too.
Are you seconding Mr. Scott's proposal?
Yeah.
I thought you did.
Well, I know, but we had more discussion about it, so I'm always happy to let my second go to someone else.
Oh, okay.
All right. So because I think he pretty much said the same thing that you did, so without necessarily having them in writing. So I'm ready to call for a vote on this. But before that, I do believe we need to take public comment.
One comment, Chair Dawson, is that it's 7 o'clock right now, and there are still a couple of agenda items. We need to extend the meeting.
Can we extend it for 15 minutes? Everybody needs to vote to extend, correct?
That's right.
So we need to take a roll call to extend for 15 minutes?
I've got to leave right now. Okay. So you can vote whichever way you want. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. So this is a vote on the table is to extend the meeting for 15 minutes, which gives us time to complete this agenda item and also plan for the next meeting dates, because we don't have anything planned beyond today. Ariana Brown?
Yes, we can do extra 15 minutes.
Thank you. Benjamin Scott?
Aye.
Kevin Jenkins?
Yes.
Mr. Crowley just left us. Yusuf Herbert?
Yes, that's fine.
And Andrea Dawson?
Yes.
Great. We'll extend for 15 minutes.
Okay, so is there any comments from the public on this item?
I see none, and nobody is unmuting their phones to make a comment.
Okay, so let's have a roll call on the motion, please.
All right. Ariana Brown?
Yes.
Thank you. Benjamin Scott?
Aye.
Kevin Jenkins?
Yes.
Marcus Crowley has left us. Patricia Ellis is not here. Yusuf Herbert?
Yes.
And Andrea Dawson?
Yes.
Great, thank you. Motion carries.
Okay, thank you. So we are on to item 8, which is 2021 meeting dates. So I guess that typically it's scheduled that we have 4 meetings a year, correct? I'm actually going to propose that we have 5 and not do summer, not do one in the summer. So we'd have to figure out when that 5th one actually is, but I'm feeling like that 4 is not quite enough. And ideally, actually, I would ask if folks are interested in 6 meetings, because you know, once a quarter, it just doesn't seem to be enough. And I think these meetings could get shorter and more efficient once we kind of get moving, and you know, we're a new committee. So I don't know, any thoughts on that? So we'll table it then. I'm not going to say more than that.
I apologize. Can you repeat what your concern was? This is Benjamin.
That, you know, we have quarterly meetings. And
Which I don't think are enough personally.
I don't either. I think that really we should be having 6 a year, and we shouldn't do July. You know, we shouldn't do a summer meeting, because normally that's when staff and most K-12 are off, or anyway, that we skip a summer. So it gives us 3 in the spring and 3 in the fall, winter.
I mean, personally, for the amount of work that needs to be done and these meetings going so long, I think they'd be a lot more efficient if they were more often and shorter.
Right. So I'm going to second 6 meetings a year, and ask for comments before we take a roll.
Staff may have a concern about that, because then they have to allocate time and money for that. So that's also a staff question.
Yeah, I do appreciate that, but I will say that in the bylaws, it does say that there's to assist us with reports and meetings, so we essentially can do our job. And so smaller districts with smaller amounts of, you know, bond program operate on 4 meetings a year. I know Oakland Unified, we have 12, we have 11. We 1 month off in the summer, but we have 11. We have monthly meetings. So with the bond about the same size. And I don't necessarily think that we need 11 meetings, but I think that we need to meet more often. And
I don't see my duty as being able to do what I need to do, or well, I'll speak for myself, but in 4 meetings a year, I mean, it's really hard to, and part of really learning this and being efficient and good at what we're doing is really becoming more familiar with it. And a lot of that happens by being in meetings, unfortunately, and learning. This is new to me, frankly, and it's a little daunting. I know some of you, this is what you do, or you're more familiar with it, but this is very new. And, you know, in 3 months, I frankly forget a lot of it, and I have to kind of refamiliarize each meeting. But yeah, having August off for sure, and then probably December.
yeah, so I would.
A few other months.
Yeah, I would propose January, March, and May, and then September, or maybe what happens though, see, you need this June or July meeting for finishing the annual report is what usually happens. So it's really, that's where you add the meeting in. But for now, I would say it's January, April, January, March, and the 1st of May. And then if we need to add one in June to finish the report, and then we do September, October, November, and then we're off again until the next year, something like that. And I don't know that we have to decide tonight, but I do know that we have to decide our next meeting date. And it would be good if we decided 2 meeting dates, and then talk about if this is a good time for folks of the day and the week, the day of the week. So, and I will say that while I have the floor right now, is that Mr. Jenkins, Kevin Jenkins, is actually going to be leaving us, and I'm sad and I'm happy for you. So because he's becoming a trustee after the vote next week, he's not opposed, he's unopposed, so he's going to become a Peralta board trustee, and congratulations to you, Mr. Jenkins.
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate it.
So do we want to just decide on January right now, and people give their times and what works for them best? We could take a poll. We don't have to decide tonight, but that way we can get finished here in the next 6 minutes.
So if we did second Wednesdays as we've done in the past, that would be January 13th. But I don't know if Wednesdays are still preferable.
So is that, are we in agreement for Wednesday, January 13th at this point for our first meeting next year?
Sounds good to me. This is Benjamin.
Good to me. Okay. Mr. Herbert?
Oh, yeah, that'll be fine. January 3rd.
Okay, Ariana Brown?
Yes, that's fine.
Okay. And it's good for me too. All right. So, and then the one other piece of business is that I'll ask that this report be scheduled to be presented in front of the board, hopefully before the end of the year if there's a December meeting. And I'll notify everyone when it's actually presented. But we'll present our annual report to the board, and everyone is welcome to come and present, or I will present. Mr. Jenkins, I don't believe it would be in the best interest maybe that he presents. You'll be kind of sitting the fence then, right? When is your official, when do you officially become a board member?
I'm not sure, Mark.
I'm not sure if it's December or January.
Yeah, I know in Oakland Unified it's January, but and in some districts it is the last board meeting in December, I think. But so I prefer that we go to the first board meeting, and I'll let you all know. And we're set for January 13th for our first meeting of next year. And unless anyone else has.
Was 5:30 the preferred time?
That good with everyone?
I prefer it because then I won't be late.
Yeah, I like that time too, actually.
Very good.
Ariana and Yusuf?
Yeah, I'm good either way. 5:30 will be fine.
Yes, that's fine.
All right.
Wonderful.
All right, so 5:30, January 13th, and I'll let you all know when when this report will get presented to the board. And as far as number 9, do any of you have new business items that you would like to put forward besides the one about legal counsel?
While people are considering that, regarding the board presentation, there's a timeline for when things need to be proposed for consideration for the next agenda item, and we just missed the deadline for the November meeting. So this would tentatively be the December meeting. There's only one meeting in November and one meeting in December.
Okay, so we'll do December then. So what day is the December meeting?
Think about maybe just doing something very exclusive for some of your high-end donors.
It's December 8th, Tuesday the 8th.
Okay. So, and what did you say, Mr. Scott?
I didn't.
Oh,
Sorry.
I thought you said something. Sorry, apologize. Okay, so other new business items can be forwarded if you have other things that you'd like on the January meeting. And we understand that Mr. Kajaya will be a standing item at our meetings that they do a presentation. So be prepared to ask questions, and please look at the district's website because it gets updated regularly. I've been visiting it some, so we know what's going on. Okay, so
Can Can I add a quick comment? Is there going to be a formal something for submitting like questions, comments about what we voted on tonight, about gathering those to then submit to the district?
Yes.
I don't know how that works with this committee.
So I think you can email those to the chair and she can consolidate and forward them on to the district.
But should there be something coming out? Because Mr. Crawley's not even here now, so
Yeah,
how would he know
I'll do an
what the
outreach.
procedure is?
So, Mr. Scott, I'll do an outreach that asks you to provide the questions by a date certain and tell you that to not violate the Brown Act and share them with everyone, and that they'll be presented to the district for consideration for the January meeting.
And do we need a deadline for those submissions, and then when we want it from the district?
Yeah, that's what I said. I'll
Oh.
provide a deadline, but I'll get feedback from Mr. Johnson when the attorney would like to see them by, because we need to give them some time. So, it'll be mid-December probably, truthfully, but we'll ask for district input before I put dates on it. Okay?
Okay, thank you.
All right. So I think we're just at 7:15 and it's adjournment, and remember to vote if you haven't already. And everyone take care and stay safe.
Thank you. Good night.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you.
Congratulations, Kevin Jenkins, and thank you so much.
Congratulations, Kevin.
Thank you. Thank you.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Good night. Bye-bye.
Thanks. Bye-bye.